I'd like to welcome you to our May 4th, 2022 edition of the Mayberry Investor Forum. I'm your host, Dan Theox, Senior Vice President of Investment Banking here at Mayberry Investments Limited. Today we'll be joined by our Executive Chairman, Mr. Christopher Berry, and today we'll be bringing you an insightful review on Supreme Ventures Limited, and we'll have none other than the Executive Chairman of SVL, Gary Parrott, present with us today as our special guest speaker. Before we get into that, please be sure to stick around to the end of the program where we'll be sharing you our top stock picks of the day. Before we get started, I'd like to take this moment to remind you that if you're looking to expand your investment portfolio or embark on your very first investment journey, Mayberry can place you on track to financial freedom. Follow us on social media to learn more, and our handle should pop up somewhere on the screen. Okay, just to introduce you to our special guest speaker for today, who's no stranger to the program. His name is Gary Parrott, and he's the Executive Chairman of SVL since March 2020. However, he was first elected to the SVL board in October 2017 and was later made chairman in June 2019. Gary has over 20 years of experience in corporate finance, having worked in senior positions at leading financial institutions in Jamaica. He's also a director on several boards, just to name a few, Lasco Distributors Limited and Iron Rock Insurance Company. So without further ado, I want to do my quick, well, first of all, welcome Gary.
Thank you.
And welcome Chairman Berry. Welcome to the program.
Hi.
Good deal. So before we get into questions and answers and discussions with Gary on the stellar performance of SVL, as usual, we like to start off with a quick review of the company from the MIL perspective. So today I'll be giving you that review, and folks, we encourage you to put in your questions early, because we'll be having a Q&A section where Gary will be answering questions on SVL. So on to the first slide. We want to talk about the performance for the last quarter ended March 2022, where we see a whopping operating profit of $1.36 billion from $12.7 billion in revenues, increased year over year of 19%, which with the cost being contained to only 13% resulted in a $2.88 billion gross profit for the quarter, folks, not the year, for the quarter. 43% whopping increase. SG&A increased by 24% quarter over quarter to 1.6 billion, and the natural result is a operating profit of 1.36 billion, 81% higher than the previous quarter, and a net profit after tax of $1 billion, 67% higher than the previous quarter. And again, I'm talking about the results for a quarter. And if you're like me and you followed this stock for the last 5 years very closely, you know 5 years ago they made a profit of $1.12 billion for the full year, return of about 45 cents EPS per share. And here we are seeing $1 billion profit for the quarter, or 38 cents in terms of EPS per share. They've also done a great job of growing total assets to $18.19 billion and shareholders' equity to $4.55 billion. Current stock price is $28, and that reflects a P of about 27 times on a trailing basis, because the earnings on a trailing basis is $2.7 billion. But again, with the quarterly profit of $1 billion, the forward PE looks more like about 17 times. In a market where I think of the average P of being about 6 times. But of course, this company has demonstrated more than 15% combined annual growth in profits over the last 5 years, as I said before, moving that profit from $1.2 billion to what's looking to be a profit. I don't want to jinx them, but doing $1.25 billion, you can do the math. I think they're going to do $4 billion for the full year, and that the growth is going to continue. The total market cap today is about $74.5 billion. Stocks traded at a high of $33 in the last 52 weeks and a low of $16. So if you're like me, a year ago you gobbled up the stock at $16, and now you're sitting pretty, really pretty. Next slide, I want to talk a little bit about the growth in all of the revenue segments. We've seen 31% growth in the lottery business, growing from 4.6 billion to $6 billion. And we've seen over 12% growth in the sports betting segment, going from 3 billion to $3.5 billion. And even the pin codes business has grown from 2.9 to $3 billion. You put that all together, and you can see the 19% growth in revenues from $10.7 billion to $12.7 billion, again, for the quarter, guys, for the quarter. I have to keep reminding myself. Next slide shows that quarterly performance for the last 2 years, and you can see that they were impacted by COVID in 2Q 2020 when profits fell to their lowest point of $192 million per quarter. They'd been averaging approximately $700 million per quarter prior to that. And what we've seen is over the last consecutive 7 quarters coming out of the pandemic, they've grown that profitability back to the $700 million level in Q4 2021, and now breaking through to a incredible $1 billion profit for the most recent quarter, Q1 2022. And obviously, we're going to be asking Mr. Peart, what is the magic code that they found to break through? Next slide, we see the stock price, how it's traded for the last approximately 2 years. And you can see it was pretty flat for a while in the $13 space. And then most recently, as those results or the rumors of the results have come out, those stock price jumped to a high of $32. Now it's settled down into the $28 space. And I think this stock is going to continue growing as future results come out. So, that's my review. I think it's a great stock. I bought it 4 years ago at $10. I loved it at 10. I was in love with it at 20 and at 25. I'm loving it even more at 28. And I'm going to keep buying. That's Dan Theok and how I feel about it as an analyst. So, Mr. Peart.
Yes, sir.
The first question comes from me. What on earth is going on over at Supreme Ventures that in 5 years, you guys, I know you've been at the helm for 2 years, Mr. Bear, and yourselves have been involved for more like 3.5, 4 years. What on earth are you guys doing to move the profitability from $1 billion, 4 years ago to now $1 billion per quarter? What's going on?
Well, we're scratching our hand middle. What you're actually seeing is that COVID delayed the true potential of Supreme. And you're now seeing all of that. I gave the example the last time we had this conversation about a coiled spring.
Yeah.
And as we move away from the lockdowns, etc., that spring is just gonna expand significantly. And you're seeing the first phase of that spring expand itself. And so just to become more granular, we had a variety of business, Acropolis, Supreme Routes, Post to Post, Any Bet, Just Bet, where the typical major revenue earning period is between 8 p.m. to 1 o'clock in the morning.
Right.
And as you would have remembered, that's like where in the heat of COVID and the height of COVID, we were at like 6 p.m. curfew. 8 p.m. was a luxury. So what you're seeing in that those businesses, as we know, move in the first quarter back to their traditional sweet spots, we've seen the revenues pick up for those businesses. We've seen the profits pick up for those businesses. And, we're excited about the first quarter because the reality is that the full curfew was not done away with until around March.
Correct. Mm-hmm.
So you weren't going full guns blazing until March. So we're looking forward to the second quarter, where we go full bore. And the expectation is that we should have another stellar quarter. And then obviously as we go into our seasonal business, we expect that to continue.
Good deal. Appreciate that. Tell me a little bit about what's going on at Caymanas. Matthew Preston says he hasn't seen a recent report on Caymanas. This is an investment you guys made about 3 years ago. Some people questioned going into that particular line of business. How has Caymanas in particular been performing? How are you feeling about that? That was obviously impacted by COVID and the lockdowns. You guys did some creative things there. One of the first businesses to get back up, going up under the pandemic. But again, it was severely impacted by that. How is that, how is that investment in your view been, having made it originally a business that, made losses forever? How is it going now? How are you guys feeling about that? What are your thoughts on Caymanas?
if you were to come, if Gary Pierre was at SVL at the time that the Caymanas opportunity come up, I mean, I would never have signed off on it, right? So it's something that we inherited. But the simple reality is that now, I believe Caymanas, of all the companies within the group, I think Caymanas has the biggest potential for growth. Growth not just for Caymanas, not just for the Supreme Group, but Jamaica. You know, so we have been able to drop those losses from over $400 million per annum to last year. You know, we're under 100 million for the first time, and there's expectation that we should break even for this year, and that's a tremendous improvement. You know, in the midst of COVID, I think what COVID did for us, you know, you know, they say it's always darkest before the morn.
Yep.
That's what COVID did for us. You know, we got the stakeholders out at Caymanas. It got really fractious at a particular point, but I think at that point, the recognition was that it was just us and them, and there's nobody else out there to help us.
Right.
Right. And I think what that did, it kind of, you know, got us closer. We ended up with our MOU, which we had worked very hard on with the stakeholders. You know, that included the regulators, you know, that had overseen it, Clovis Metcalf and his people, Ian Passad, etc., Solomon, Lorna. They've done it phenomenal. And I think starting from that, it started a situation where we started to see more and more people trusting us. And as that trust built, we were able to start to do certain things. So, in short, when the deal was done, there was a particular plan in place. We threw that plan into the bin after 400 million in losses. We went with another set and another plan, and you know, those guys did well. I mean, under Michael Bernard's chairmanship, I mean, they did well. It was just that a series of stuff. I mean, we were going to do bingo. The bingo guy died the day before the bingo was to start. We did a horse raffle, so those things just didn't work out, and unfortunately, we didn't get what we expected there. And then we hooked up with Solomon, and that just has been amazing. And you know, one of the things is that, you know, Supreme isn't afraid to try things, and by extension, Caymanas isn't afraid to try things. And you know, under Solomon's leadership, and also along with Lorna Gooden, they've just done very well. Cut a long story short, you know, so they've come out with the very popular Reggae 6, Sketch 9, and what all of that rolls up into is significantly more revenue.
Right.
And you know, Caymanas was also impacted by COVID in terms of the time period. So in simulcast, all the races on the eastern side, on the western side of the U.S., you know, which would normally come in at 9, 10 o'clock in the night, we missed that. And so now you're seeing all of that come into play now, you know, and so we're moving to our next level. You know, I think the harmony that we have, and I gave an example the other day, you know, Caymanas was one of the first sporting places to reopen and for spectators to come back out. And you'd have heard recently, you know, some people asking the questions, what's so special, what did we do, etc. And the fact of the matter is that every single sporting association had the same opportunity to do what we did at Caymanas, but they chose not to. But it wasn't a simple process. I remember when we were negotiating, you know, one of the technocrats said, you know what, just give it to them, because the amount of illiterate and uneducated people out at Caymanas, there's no way they'd follow these protocols. In a week, they're going to breach them, we'll just take it back. You're like, okay, fine, no problem. And when we went out there, I mean, it was amazing. You know, all of these guys came together, and together we got it to work. They were wearing their masks, they had social distancing, and to this day, we haven't had any significant breaches, if at all. You know, and that showed me that what could be done out at Caymanas. So those people that some people are willing to write off, they had the capacity, they had the ability to do what we never expected them to do. And it's things like that we've just grown on. And as I said, we're trying to foster harmony. There's some people who will always need more, you know, but ultimately, I think where we are now, I think we've cracked the code, and I think we will continue to grow from here. We're going to move into a different phase. I think we understand how to move the revenue, and the revenue will continue to move. We now have to jump on a plane, and we're going to have to visit places like Dubai, Hong Kong, Australia, because we're building an international track. We're building a track that is to international standards. And so as such, we need to attract those types of owners to supplement our local owners. I think the owners that we have now are phenomenal. They've done well. They've assisted. They've supported. But we need other people to come on board to really move Caymanas to where we think Caymanas needs to be. We're going to need some more people, whether externally, etc., to help move the standard.
Good deal. No, appreciate that update. On to a much easier one, scratches.
Oh my God.
This one's a hit, but some folks are asking, are you not concerned it may cannibalize other products you have? And looking at the results, I don't have that concern, but I want to let you answer that question.
You know, Cashpot is just it's just a phenomenal product. You know, and we've done well with Scratchers. I think Scratchers is probably one of the most successful launches of a product in any industry in the country for a very, very long time, if not ever. So from the jingle, your hand middle is scratching you. I mean, everything just worked. It's one of those things that, whatever you thought of worked. And I mean, kudos to IGT and, Heather Golson, the marketing team. They've done phenomenally well. All this thing came together. And, one of the key things about Scratchers is that Scratch was launched in the second week of March. So all of the excitement you saw was for 2 to maximum 3 weeks in the month. The second quarter will be the first quarter where you have a full 3 months of Scratch. So as an analyst, I'm sure you can figure that out in terms of where you see things going. So we're very bullish on the second quarter numbers because we're gonna, for the first time, we're gonna see that true potential start to take place. And as it pertains to the numbers in Scratchers, the true numbers on that we'll know in the second quarter. But if there's anything that should hit Cashpot off as number one, it should be another product that we have brought, right?
Exactly.
But Scratchers is doing very, very well, and we were very, very happy with Scratchers, and we're looking forward to great things from Scratchers.
I appreciate that. Mr. Berry, I'd like to get some insights from you. Do you have a question or two for Mr. Peart, sir?
Can't hear.
You're muted, Chris. You're muted.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
We can
sir.
hear you loud and clear.
Okay, thanks for that, Dan. So, Mr. Peart,
Yes, sir.
SVL, people think of SVL solely as a gaming company. But I hear you have other plans. How should we think of SVL?
Well, it's interesting you ask that question because this is why we're so excited about the potential of SVL. So, the average person, as you have said, sees SVL as a lottery company. The big difference is that we see SVL as a transaction platform with a lottery business bolted onto that transaction platform. And the moment you change the prism and you look at it from that perspective, the first thing that hits you is that there are several additional businesses that you can put on this platform. So, for example, a lot of people don't know that SVL is the number one in the sale of PIN codes for your phone credit in the country. And so that's on that same transaction platform. We're very big on fintech. We have started a lot. We have a lot of fintech businesses right now. All our lottery products, or the majority of our lottery products, are available at svgames.com. Our PIN code business, where Charge Up, is available online as well. Caymanas has an online solution. So we have the ability to really scale our fintech business, and amongst other businesses, which I won't speak to the specifics of it. But if you stop and vision with me in terms of what you can put on a transaction backbone, you'd realize that the sky is almost limitless in terms of how many businesses and the different types of businesses that you can put there. So when you look at the business that way, there is significant diversification that can occur. You would have seen where we acquired within the space, where we got into the box business with Routes. We deepened the sports betting business with Post to Post. We bought into I call it a fixed microfinance business because in addition to that, we have a fintech microfinance business that's called Evolve that we use on artificial intelligence to score you, lend you money via RTGS. We get repaid accordingly. So we fill out all the boxes, and obviously as we go forward, we'll have more to do. And the simple reality is this, Chris. When COVID hit, one of the first things we looked at, was the government had put these things out, and the position we took as a responsible corporate company is we wanted our people to be safe, we wanted our customers to be safe, and we wanted to operate within those guidelines. And obviously, within those guidelines, we wanted to generate as much revenue and profit given those guidelines. And so we had to be more innovative. We had to, find efficient ways to deal with the costs, etc. And I think we're pretty successful at it. But what it basically did is that a lot of the ideas and a lot of the businesses that we would have had now, we kind of were delayed. So now that we're going full bore again, you're going to see a faster rollout of those businesses.
Appreciate it. You mentioned fintech, and so at this point in time, I'd share a question from Tatiana Wilson, who's asked if we can elaborate on SVL's relationship with Motech Technologies and the effectiveness of their credit risk software so far.
Yeah, so Motech is the engine that drives Evolve. I made reference a while ago with a question from Chris about Evolve. And Evolve is our totally online, electronic, automated microfinance business. And it's driven by a credit scoring model from Motech. We have seen a nice growth in the portfolio of Evolve. Again, we rolled it out in the heart of COVID, and so we were very careful in how we had expanded it. And so we have it just within our retailer network. And I think, again, that's another area that we'll be spending more time with in trying to move that to another level. So as I said, what has happened is that during COVID, you kind of tuck in, and you make sure everybody's fine. We did a lot of innovation. We had a lot of products. Now we're rolling out the products, so like Donna here, you're a fast car driver, rain is falling, you have to take your time and drive the car, you don't want to wreck it. Track is dry, you have slicks on, you're like, how fast can you go now?
Time to go.
That's where we are.
I appreciate that. And Caymanas is generating quite a buzz. Thanks, guys, for the questions. Keep them coming in. I've got Devin, who's a genius here, asking, have you guys thought about spinning off Caymanas, to allow Jamaicans to be able to own it directly? Why do we have to own it indirectly through SVL?
Well, the simple reality is that SVL does not own Caymanas. Caymanas is a lease, and I can speak to that because we have just completed 5 years of in that lease with Caymanas. And one of the key things in that lease was Caymanas had to spend $500 million Jamaican over the 5-year period. The fact of the matter is that, at the end of the 5-year period, we had exceeded almost $3 billion. So we passed that. We might not have done everything specifically within a list of things for 500 million, but we have done a lot more outside of that was required to move it. And it's 5 years of a 30-year lease with our option to go for another 30 years. So even though we don't own it, it's a very long-term lease. As it pertains to spinning off the company, I think how we're setting up the company now, we set the company in a position where if we need to, we're able to do it. At this point in time, I don't think we're there as yet. But it's something that, especially for the stakeholders out at Caymanas, if they're minded that way, we definitely would move in that direction.
Good deal. Appreciate that. So, Devin, again, they've turned this business around from loss-making to breaking even this year. Obviously, you want to get it in the green, make some profits, and then we're happy to work with you, Devin, to make that happen. Appreciate that. Mr. Berry, any further question or comment from you?
Not right now, Dan.
Good deal. Okay. The questions are coming in fast and furious. I appreciate that. Gary, again, tell us a little bit about the reach of SVL. People think of it as a gaming company. As we said before, you do so much more. You operate through, almost 2,000 outlets. You have partnerships. You're expanding partnerships with Carreras. Tell us a little bit about your reach and capability in the network, just so, again, people can appreciate what we're talking about.
So, when you speak about our distribution network, that's another really low-hanging fruit for diversification, expansion, and profitability that we look at. So we have almost 1,300 locations that primarily for lottery. We have between our other subsidiaries, which is Caymanas, AnyBet, JustBet, etc. When you roll up all of that, that's about 2,000 points of sales. The deal we have done with Carreras has given us exposure to another 8,000. So overall, it's almost 11,000
Wow.
points of sale for the Supreme network. And so, that puts us now in a position that, depending on the product, we can drive significant, distribution right across the island through that network. So it's just a matter of selecting and determining how we're going to do that. But that's another type of business that they have to go out and find a CEO that understands distribution. But it's there. So one of the things you'd have seen, we're doing a pilot with some kiosks. Okay, we're trying to lift the level of vending in the country. And so we have these kiosks as a solar powered thing where you can sell phone charge, you sell a lottery products. And the partnership with Carreras, you also sell Carreras' products as well. And we have several distribution companies manufacturing food, drinks, etc. that has approached us and wants to distribute via those kiosks. Because you're able now to go into micro communities and establish a position, as opposed to you'd have thought that the shop on the corner was a small shop.
Right.
But what the numbers we're seeing now, you actually have even smaller areas that can be supported by these kiosks. And we're seeing a demand for it, and it's something that I think once the pilot is complete, we'll definitely go a bit further and get some more of those kiosks. But what we're seeing already is that potential to distribute products is definitely there. It's a very difficult business, so I'm not assuming that overnight I can do it. But if we see the right opportunity, definitely we could do that as well.
And speaking about sort of furthering and repeating and distributing, David Rios has an applicable question. Is there an SVL roadmap for Caribbean-based sort of rollout based on your success here in Jamaica?
Come on to my head, David. Ultimately, so what has happened, people don't realize, that you could argue that SVL is a global company. Because we have a deal in South Africa where we beam our game into South Africa. We actually have a business in Guyana, and as you can very well imagine, we were excited by the South Africa transaction because it was the first on the continent of Africa, and then COVID hit immediately. And South Africa has had a harder hit from COVID than we have had, and how they've responded. They've responded with even more draconian measures than they did here in Jamaica. So again, we're just coming out, and what you have is that you're coming out for the starting line, and then you have all of these things to do, and the question is, which are the ones you're going to do first? What's the hierarchy? And so ultimately, we're going to do them all. And the question is, we're just going to start with the ones that give us the biggest bang for our buck, and then as we fix those and cycle, we'll continue adding and adding and adding. Because we didn't touch on it, but we're digitizing the entire business.
Right.
And we're already seeing benefits associated with that. So in addition to work from home, we now have a hot desk policy where your employees have to book the tables and chairs and whatever before they come in. So those things add to a level of efficiency. Because one of the things that we don't want to get into is some of the good habits we developed during COVID. You don't want to lose them now that you're coming back into face-to-face.
Good deal. And last question, I think, any update on the production company with Main Event since entertainment is no longer leased?
Well, that's a good question. So again, that's one of the things that, we're looking back on. We did those deals with the expectation of, the RMA kind of being relaxed. And it happened later rather than earlier. And so now that, we're back and we're ready to go, it's one of the areas that we're looking on, because they're right. Supreme is an entertainment entity. And we have an exciting product to launch in the first week of January 2023. My marketing people are like, Mr. Pearty, you need to keep this secret. We have to finish planning for it. And that event, or those series of events, will now create a need for that production type company.
Gotcha.
Because there's that event and there's another major one right behind it that's going to require that type of interface. And once we execute those things, it's going to create opportunities right across the Caribbean and the globe. So we have to start developing that expertise. As you're aware, we have a strategic relationship with Main Event because Supreme owns 10% of Main Event.
Yes.
The CEO of Main Event is our executive chairman out at Caymanas. So it's not just a company strategic level. I mean, Solomon and I are good friends. I mean, we've been good friends from high school, and we've been coming from there, right? So we have an excellent working relationship. It's not good to have Solomon and I locked up in a room for too long because it's going to be a big check that's coming out, in terms of the ideas. But we're looking forward to that. We are looking at ideas that we can potentially change how you finance events in the country. So we have a lot of ideas on that. And we think when we start doing those kind of things, the end result is that you're going to see significantly more events. You're going to see bigger events. Out at Caymanas, there's an opportunity to build an event center.
Yeah.
And I don't want to get into too much details on that as well to give away the idea. But what I'll say to you, certainly by the back end of December, you're going to be seeing all of the different arms of Supreme blossoming. And as I said, people are going to be genuinely surprised the width and breadth of what we'll be able to achieve.
I look forward to it. One more question, if I can pull it out of you.
Sure.
Damien Walder asked, could we see a Kentucky-like Derby event here in Jamaica? Is that possible?
But I think that whoever asked that question has been hearing me talk privately, and it's actually the reason I said that Caymanas, I think, has the biggest potential of all the companies in the group, because I've always had a vision that, if you understand racing, especially in the U.S., when the winter comes, a lot of people send their horses down to the south or Cala, etc. And the temperature is similar to Jamaica. And so, if you can capture some of those guys and you can set up an infrastructure that is similar, and you start getting guys from out of the US, you bring the Saudis, you bring the New York, the Hong Kong guys, you bring Australia, etc., and you create that ecosystem here, those billionaires move with a particular crew. They want certain amenities. They have $20 to $25 million homes that they spend 2 weeks a year in. So once they have their homes and their horses here, it's a matter of time before they're going to be like, hold on a second, why don't we just have a race here? And I feel that, you've always referred to the Triple Crown, which is the Kentucky Belmont and Preakness. I think if we execute properly and we attract the right set of people, you could have the Quadruple Crown with the fourth race being run at Caymanas Park in December. Right? It's a wild idea, it's a wild vision, but hey, aim for the stars, you might catch a moon.
I like it, and Jamaica is not short in terms of its branding. I mean, really has strong brand presence. So, I look forward to next quarter, next year. I mean, SVL, as I said, folks, this is the first. I'm going to be braver, bolder. This is the first large investment I made 5 years ago. And, at $10, I bought as much as I could buy. And I have no regret whatsoever. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Berry. Thank you, Mr. Berry, for your great advice. And with that, Sir Berry, last comment I'll give to you before we move on with the program, if you have any. I mean, if I'm happy with my small, million of units, I can't imagine how you're at. But I'll leave the last comment to you before we move on with the program, Mr. Berry.
Yes, so are you hearing me, Dan?
Yes, sir. Loud and clear.
Yes, so I have one question for Gary. So Gary, what is your estimate for the underground gaming market in Jamaica, and what is Supreme doing to capture its fair share of that? And how does that, what's the total size of the above ground gaming market? Can you give us some metrics on those things?
Sure. Because something that people overlook. So, David, who is our resident external accounting critic, um, 2 years ago, our auditors determined that what we used to refer to as gross sales was not true gross sales. So when you look in our P&L and L and you see total income, it's our true gross sales minus what we refer to as price liabilities, which are the prices we pay out. But if you look on the true gross sales for the quarter, it was approximately 27.7 billion, almost 28 billion dollars. So if you analyze that, you're looking at what, 4832, 42, that's almost 111 billion dollars. There are not many companies in the country that is generating more than 100 billion dollars in revenue. Now, to your question, Chris, so I think that is a phenomenal achievement for Supreme, especially for a company that is basically 22 years from start to be generating over 100 billion a year. But to your question as to the underground, there are different views as to the size of the underground. I think the underground is potentially anywhere between 20 to 25% of the lottery business, because the underground operates using a mirror of Cashpot, or more importantly, a mirror of our lottery games. So what that means is that when we draw our numbers, they use the same thing, but they have different metrics that they sell to their people. So if you use that 20 to 25% on 110 billion dollars, you're looking north of 25. You're looking around 25 to 30 billion dollars, give or take. That's in the underground, just for lottery. But so every single event that you can bet on, there is an illegal underground equivalent, right? So within horse racing, I think one of the biggest benefits we're seeing from horse racing is that the changes and the tweaks that we've made in horse racing, I think a lot of that underground money has now started to find its way into our tote at Caymanas. As it pertains to lottery, there's still a lot more to be done there. And you'd have to work with regulators in terms of some of the enforcement activities to try and get that. But obviously, when you look on the level of taxes that we pay as Supreme, the government would be losing a lot of taxes by not finding a way to get to that money in the underground. So that's huge. But at the same time, whilst it's the BJLC's responsibility, whilst it would help the government, if Supreme finds a way in which to attract those illegal players to the formal market, that gives you an idea of how much more growth potential there is for Supreme. Whilst we're talking on the legal side, I think one of the questions people need to appreciate is that our revenue is highly correlated to remittances, inflation, etc. So especially when you see the jump in inflation, it's likely to register going forward in what we're doing at Supreme. And as I said, if you put it in perspective, I think Dan had alluded to it before. If you're looking at inflation in the 10 to 11% region, the fact of the matter is that top line sales grew in excess of 10%. So we have a very good projection of where we're going to be. We think we can maintain this growth rate. We think we can maintain and expand the profitability of the business, and obviously, that will continue with the dividend payments as well.
Absolutely.
Because what I thought you would have spoken about, Dan, is that when you made the investment at $10, which is about 5 years ago, this year, if you do a projection, let's assume we make $1 billion for each quarter.
Yep.
That would be $4 billion. But December quarter is normally a little bit better. So 4 little.
Yes.
That works out to almost $1.
$1.52.
There you go. So put differently, 34 times 4. It was a 4, 4, 16, 4, 3, 12. That's $1.34.
Yep.
Yeah? And so $1.34 on your $10 is a 13% return.
Yeah, it's crazy.
right? So if you bought it and kept it, I mean, even though the true way of calculating is where the current stock price
Yep.
is, which is how you should do it.
Yes.
But the fact that you have it at 10,
Yes.
if just holding the stock at 10, you now have a dividend yield of 13%, even when inflation is at 10.
Yeah, it's amazing. And then the increase in value that keeps coming. So
And you have your capital appreciation.
yeah.
You can't, I mean, you don't want anything else.
yeah, yeah. Again, I mean, 4 years ago, I said it. Carreras and SVL, there's just nothing that comes close to them in terms of dividend yield. 5 years later, what distinguishes SVL over Carreras is SVL also has the growth in the capital gains.
Correct.
And the growth in the potential of the business. So while Carreras is impacted by the illicit trade in a much greater way, SVL is proving itself to be, a great business. I know there are many a year ago when we saw competition rolling out who started to get afraid, and I don't know if it's the Digicel cable and wireless complex, but 2 years later, you guys have increased the profitability as if the competition has only fanned the fire, and so that's that's really
Well, I
exciting.
think you need to define competition. I think what a lot of people missed is that Supreme has always had competition.
Yeah.
And the reality is that Supreme's biggest competition was Supreme Ventures.
Mm-hmm.
And what I mean by that is that Supreme did not have a problem in disrupting its own products.
Right.
And so, when you go back to the start, Supreme started with 2 products.
Mm-hmm.
When we came in 2017, they had gone up to about 8 or 9 products.
Mm-hmm.
Since then, we have put on another 8 or 9. So we were in the business of disrupting our own products. So we were our own competitors long before, anybody who could call himself a competitor comes to the place. So
You mean you were innovating?
yeah, we're always innovating. I mean, people call it different things,
Yeah.
right? But as I said,
You mean you will not be out innovated?
you have to start to innovate to even get to out innovate. But anyway,
Yeah.
the reality, guys, is that somebody once made a comment that we were a monopoly, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which we're not, because
Correct.
if a true monopoly has something that does well, in this case, Cashbot, and you just ride it and leave it alone. We have all of these other things. I mean, if we did not try to disrupt our business, we would not have found scratchers.
Right. There you go.
And what people miss, especially if you just don't think wide enough, right, is that you can always expand a market.
Mm-hmm.
And the beautiful thing about Scratch is that Scratch was designed to go after a totally new market, which we are seeing evidence that will be penetrating that market. And so that's even more exciting than your traditional growth numbers, because it's a market that has significantly more spending power than our key market, and we'll continue to develop it. So again, what you have is that we have the potential to expand across a variety of businesses. We have the potential to expand within the space that we call Jamaica. We have the potential to expand in the Caribbean. We have the potential to expand globally across the world. And so in each of these places, you can move, and it's just significantly more revenue, significantly more profits. It's just the time and the bandwidth, to come in and join us on this exciting journey.
I really am excited, and we didn't talk about the technology play.
Oh my God.
Sports betting, whatever.
Yeah.
Technology is going to make it much more convenient for folks to be able to do that, and again, tap a different demographic in. So I won't ever go to an outlet, but I'll certainly use my phone to mess around. So I'm really excited about it.
We started online, as part of completing the full suite of games and in the different business channels. And right now, arguably, I think we have one of the largest online businesses in the Caribbean.
Wow.
So when you look on the different platforms that we have SV Games Online, which is 10 products. We have Mbet, which is out at Caymanas, that has a variety of different products. We are online with AnyBet, we're online with JustBet, we're online with Acropolis. So these are businesses that are not just there as to say, hey, this is online. They're generating significant revenue for the business, because that is the future.
Right, absolutely.
So you're making the shift, and so we're well positioned. Whichever way the consumer wants to go, we're positioned to meet them and to give them something that they would want. And as I said, this is where the true excitement comes now, because you're telling me once about the Mayberry app. That when people saw the Mayberry app, and it's
Yeah.
like one of the best apps out there, they got all crazy, right? And it's interesting you bring up Mayberry, because the only other stock out there I think that is probably better than SVL is MJE, because if you buy MJE, you actually get SVL at a
At a
discount.
discount, yeah. Let me tell you. Absolutely.
So it's like you can buy SVL directly.
Yes.
I don't know what the discount is now, but if you buy MJE, you actually
Yeah,
get a 20-30%
20 to 30%
discount on that.
And the dividend flows come same way. So
Yeah.
exciting times ahead. We're obviously going to have you back on another program. Folks, I apologize. The questions are now just flying in, and we've kind of run out of time, and I need
Really?
to...
We can take two more.
We need to...
Since they're flying, let's take two.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm sure the video guy will get a 10% bonus.
Yeah, why not? So Philip says, are the percentage margins on scratches greater than what you get from the cash pot? So if somebody's interested in knowing the margins and what's happening with scratches versus cash pot.
Next question.
Yeah, there you go. You want us to tell you the payout ratio, Philip? And David says, good one, and he's laughing also with us. Philip Burgess says, quadruple crown, yes, we're looking forward to it. Devin says, Cayman is sounding really exciting. He would love to see it listed. And
they should all come out. I mean, we can invite them out every Saturday. They're invited to come to the director's box. Just give me a call. I'll set it up for you. No, we have tours and stuff out there. That is going to be a big money spinner. Certainly by next year, but as we go further this year. And I can guarantee you, every single person that I've carried out at Caymanas enjoys themselves thoroughly, because a different vibe is a different way to spend the day. And you will start betting, I mean, and catch a horse, that vibe. And as I said, I'll have to say to you, please don't behave like a Virago when your horse is winning. Because that feeling when you bet on a horse and the horse is winning,
yes.
Oh my God, I have seen some prudes behave in a way, but you're like, what's going on? So guys, anytime we can set up something in director's box.
Last one from Chester Francis Jackson. He says, is it fair to say that Scratches has produced more millionaires in its weeks of operations than any other innovators?
No, it's not fair to say that. Caymanas produces more millionaires, I think, than any other products that we have. So, especially with the Reggae 6,
okay,
they generate about an average of about 3 to 4 millionaires every 2 weeks.
Wow.
So Caymanas I tell you, it has the most potential. And again, what people need to understand, the gaming market is very segmented. The person who plays cash pot, which is a one-ball game, does not play Lucky Five, the five-ball game. The person who plays Lotto doesn't play whatever other game. The guy who gambles on a racehorse don't play nothing else. The person who bets on sports don't go. There's very few crossover.
Got it.
They are fine in this lane, and it's an amazing thing. And when you look at the market research and you see it very segmented, very defined, you realize that this is how the business is run. And you just have to accept what your customers say and you go down the road. So what I would say is, Chester, you need to bet on more horses.
What gets me excited about the digitization process is understanding what your customers like, their behavior, and being able to customize the products and offerings for them even more. So I'm really excited about the digitization to come. Well, folks, again,
that's it. One for the road.
Stephen Dawkins said, Gary, I'll definitely give you a call. So, and David says, you guys are doing a great job. You've captured this new market in an entirely new way. So thanks for that, guys. Really appreciate it. We will be back. There's another quarter coming, guys, right? So we're going to have Gary back here. And if he doesn't make $1 billion in the next quarter, we're going to flog him, right, guys? That's what we're going to do. So thanks.
I'm going to lose on my share compensation then.
Yeah, there you go. Very Musk-ish.
I tell you.
Very Musk-ish. I appreciate it. Thanks for that, Gary. Folks, moving on into the program, we want to go into.
So Dan, before you
Go
move
ahead. Yes,
on,
Oh,
absolutely.
Jesus.
before you move on, what is this I hear that Peart is taking his entire paycheck in stock? I mean, you're so rich that you can afford not to get paid.
Boy, I'm telling you. Tell us, Mr. Parrott, what is this about stock
What's up with that?
compensation?
I am not that rich that I can't afford to not get paid.
Right.
I guess I have some cash that I can afford to take stock in lieu of cash. But no, I think from our governance perspective, it aligns my view with our shareholders.
Got it.
And as you was pointed out, I'm the executive chairman of the company, so I chair the board, and I manage the entire company. And we are running this business to create significant value. And I think by taking shares, it sends a very strong signal that, listen, I am 100% aligned with my shareholders. And if whatever we're doing, it doesn't make sense if we make $1 billion if the price of the stock does not reflect it. So we have to continue to make more and more money for the market to respond. And I think that is something that is the least I could do, because as I said, there's a lot of stuff to be done, and I was happy that I was able to convince my HR committee, and with their support, they signed off on it, as well as the board. And the feedback I've gotten from shareholders has been very, very positive.
Well, I'm excited as a shareholder to know that your future value is tied to the success of the company, and more specifically the stock price. So that's
Right.
very, very innovative. Thanks for that, Mr. Berry. Really appreciate that. And so, folks, we're going to move on in the next 5-6 minutes as we look to close the program. We want to look at the top decliners and gainers of the day. Starting with the gainers, we have a company called iCreate, up 28% after releasing their first quarter result. I wish them all the very best. MDS up 23%. Kingston Wharfs up 11.89%. Elite Diagnostics up 8%, and Stanley Motor up 7%. Congrats there, PB. Quite a bit of great results coming out of his shop, Stanley Motor and PBS, etc. Looking at the decliners, we see First Rock there, both the Jamaican and the US dollar. I'm sure that's just temporary. We see Cygnus Real Estate down 7.87%, down to $16.63. Again, I'm sure that's just temporary. And we see JetCon down 5.65%, and Epley down 5.53%. Next segment, our market segment, we typically like to look at the exchange rate and see what's happening in the market there. And on the first slide here, we have our favorite graph that shows the hills and valleys of how the
Yes.
exchange rate has moved over. I'm stuck on stocks. How the exchange rate has moved over the last 2 years, and we can see sort of a very cyclical movement there with a slight upward trend, and the dollar at times falling to a low of 147 and a high of 158. And on the next slide, you'll see that sort of year to date, there's been limited devaluation of the exchange rate, moving only by 0.19% from 155 to 155.38. So that's over a 4-month period. So despite the year-over-year devaluation or depreciation, the year-over-year depreciation of about 8%, despite inflation rearing its ugly head, what we see in the last 4 or 5 months is the exchange rate checking somewhat, and we see the central bank certainly moving very actively by raising interest rates to try to control inflation, and also by putting some restrictions on new US dollar issuances in the exempt distribution market. So we can see the central bank certainly getting active in trying to check inflation to bring it back closer to the target of 4 to 6% of the next 2 years, although we think inflation will certainly still continue to trend high for the next 12 to 18 months, just because it's imported inflation, and to some extent this increase in interest rates, which is a good attempt to mop up liquidity, will work. We still won't expect to see inflation trending back down until we see commodity prices checking, in particular oil prices, food prices, wheat, because of the war, We've seen wheat prices also up, and lots of other food commodities. Our friends over at CPJ keep telling us how the commodity prices for food are up 30 to 50% year over year, and the challenges that that's creating for the country because we still import 3.5 times as much as we export. So um, still good opportunities there, I think. I think the central bank's doing the best it can. As we come out of the pandemic, I certainly expect the flows from tourism to pick up tremendously, and therefore the tourism-related stocks I think are going to do good over the next 6 to 9 months. Remittances have been, extremely faithful and strong throughout the pandemic, Gary, and that's really helped with the inflows on exchange rate. Any further thoughts from you, Gary, on what's going on with exchange rate and expectations over the next 6 months or so?
No, I mean you've touched on most of them. I think what is good is that the exchange rate has settled down somewhat. I mean it's trading at very tight band. Interest rates have moved up, and normally when interest rates move up, the exchange rate tends to stabilize. I think the big thing that came out today was the fact that the Fed has moved their interest rates by
Wow.
50 basis points. But most importantly, they've also signaled that they're going to start to sell off the 9 trillion worth of bonds, and they're going to take some other measures, to try and, to arrest inflation.
Yep.
And the challenge has always been is not that they won't stop inflation, is what's now required to stop it can push the world economy into recession. And I think that we have to be very careful about that. And I think locally, the big issue for a lot of money managers, which affects the FX market, is, where will the interest rates stop? We're seeing where you're not getting as many people investing long on the tenor cycle, because they want to keep funds short, because they want to get a clear signal that interest rates have peaked before they start investing long again. So I think a lot of those things will potentially lead to a short-term disruption of the credit market, in the sense that the ease with which people were able to get credit and funding. I think you're going to start to see that slow a bit, because no institution wants to lend long at low interest rates, and
Yep.
then interest rates come out higher than that. So I think we're managing that. And as I said, the central bank, I think they would have been successful in the first phase, because unlike the U.S., Governor Biles and his team moved interest rates early, came under a lot of flack for it. And the simple reality is that it's now seen as being a great move to have been able to move it incrementally to get to where they are now. And we are certainly not facing what the US is facing, where you're going to have these massive, because we don't appreciate, the impact of a 50 basis points. We're like,
Yep.
hey,
Yep.
half a point, right? But for an economy their size, that's massive. They normally be moving incrementally 25 basis points, etc. And again, they're indicating that there's another 50 basis points at the next meeting. So, kudos to, Governor Biles and his team. He got it right this time. I mean, because the reality is that when he gets it wrong, he hears about
Yep,
it. Right?
absolutely, absolutely, absolutely.
So hopefully. And then when you look on the budget numbers, I think we had a small budget surplus, so, we have managed to come through, not unscathed, but I think we've come through a lot better than most. But I think now the question is, how do we manage the next couple of months? And, I think that exchange rate is going to be the indicator that tells you whether it's done properly or not.
Agreed, agreed. And certainly looking to much more improved flows going into the summer. Tourism picks back up. Fortunately, we really hope that this small increasing trend with the positivity rate won't cause any concerns, because this strain doesn't seem to be as challenging as the previous strain. So I personally don't expect us to have any further curfews or lockdowns coming. I like the commitment of the Prime Minister to say we've got to learn to live with this thing and push through. It's great to see the economy finally opening back up and folks returning to the new norm, which includes, of course, entertainment and spending in that regards. And we earn so much from that in terms of, again, tourism and folks who come down to enjoy the entertainment products. I'm looking forward, maybe not personally, but to some fest and those types of events which draw real good crowds to Jamaica and brings in the dollars which we so desperately need. So I think exciting days ahead. We look forward to having you back again next quarter, Mr. Parrott. No excuses, sir. Keep up the good work
Thank
and
you.
keep working on the stock price. Well, to our viewers, thank you guys for tuning in today and being a part of today's investor update where we did our special presentation on Supreme Ventures Limited. I'd like to thank my fellow panelists, our executive chairman, Christopher Berry. Thanks, Mr. Berry, for being a part of today's program. And I'd like to thank our special guest speaker, who's no stranger to the program, Gary Peart, for his invaluable contributions. And folks, I promise you, we'll have him again back next quarter. So don't miss our investor forum, which resumes in the upcoming weeks. Listen out for who our next special guest speaker will be. Be sure to follow us on social media and to tune into our YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Mayberry Investments Limited. Thank you, folks, for tuning in today's program. And remember, wise investor, be safe and slow and steady wins the race. Goodbye.